hovering high above us.
Whoa. There's so... Look at everything. It's so... It's just so... You know, wow.
Free Fargo, KRFF, LP 95.9 FM, Moorhead, Fargo.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Legalize ND Takeover, also known as Greener Pastures. Coming up on the show, guest host Steve Peterson will be joining us to discuss a continuation of our lobbying efforts and what happened with decriminalization, in addition to further issues going on in the medical marijuana program. Stand by as Steve tunes in. All right. And we are now joined by Steve Peterson. Steve, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
Very good. How you doing there, sir? What are we doing on levels?
I think we're doing pretty good. How do you sound?
I sound okay to me. So yeah, there's issues afoot here in North Dakota that we're encountering in the medical marijuana program. And do you want to dive right into that right away, Dave, or do we have any other updates that you want to touch on before we dive into that?
So I guess the biggest update that we have is that Legalize ND has finally gotten Legislative Council's approval on their most recent version of the ballot initiative. What does that mean? That essentially means that going forward, we now have a meeting of the sponsors where they will supposedly approve the bill, and then we'll have to submit to Secretary of State Al Jaeger. We will be petitioning soon. To check out the most recent version of the measure, go to legalizend2020.com, and you can see where we're at and where we're heading. So that's the big news on the Legalize ND front.
All right, well, let's jump into some of the issues that we're running across in the medical marijuana program, and then I'll gladly give you an update on what we did during the last session as far as the decriminalization was concerned, or that which was called decriminalization. I don't consider it decrim.
Nobody does.
Well, some people mistakenly did. Apparently the media did. So let me dive right into what I was dealing with in the last couple of days, is that I've had a few patients here in the state reach out to me about shortages in the program. Now, admittedly, the program is new, and they're still getting everything online, but we're easily a year out from when everything was supposed to start.
Well, I don't even want to call the program new, because it's voted on in 2016, okay, in November 5th or 6th. That's always election day. And then you go forward, and it's supposed to be enacted under state law within a month, according to the North Dakota Constitution. Now, we all know that wasn't going to happen. But in theory, we are at the 3-year mark of the program.
Right.
So it's not really a new program.
Right. Well, and that's 100% true. I can't argue that. I mean, they've had more than enough time to ramp up. But on the pediatric side, the pediatric product for the kids with autism and with other issues, what we're discovering there is that there is now none of the pediatric tinctures available in the state at the 38.5 milligram level, that is. And some of the children that are autistic have responded very well to this in the past when they were able to get it from the dispensaries. But ultimately, what happened was that a lot of people who were not pediatric patients, other medical marijuana patients that have their cards, bought up all the pediatric supply. So now the state has none, and I know of 5 families directly that are just cracking their last bottles open now. Their main complaint is that none of the growers can give them a time frame of when these are going to be coming available. And that's all they're looking for is like, hey, is it a week? Is it a month? Are we 6 months out? No, what are we going to do about this?
Well, that stems from the supply problem. I think during the legislative session, it was brought up by many people that the current supply caps would not allow for a program to operate effectively. And we did raise the supply caps this legislative session. But the reality is, if it's not profitable, it's not going to be produced. And you opened up the market for adults to use the tinctures, which is, given the supply, a questionable decision.
Right.
If we had full supply, it would be fine. But once you opened it up to everyone started maxing out their tinctures. And now that's why we're seeing the huge supply shortages. At least that's my understanding, at least in Grand Forks.
Right. And the constituent that I was talking to has called every operational dispensary that's in the state to see if they have any product available. This constituent literally drove from the east border to the west border of the state just to go get the last couple of bottles that were available in the state. So, admittedly, there was a mistake made when they allowed the adults to buy the pediatric tincture. I would suppose that if this didn't happen, that there'd probably be plenty still out there. However, because that mistake was made and it was allowed to be sold off to the adult patients here in the state, that now our pediatric patients have no access to the 38.5 milligram tincture. I mean, ultimately, if we could open it up to where they could dilute the RSO down, the full spectrum oil that's available in the dispensaries, that would work for these kids. But legally,
that would face so many certification issues and so many inspection problems.
Right.
They'd have to send it entirely back to the state to get recertified as the new product.
Once they finish lessening the amount so that they don't inadvertently be making a legal tincture for a child, admittedly.
Yeah, and we don't want children, full disclosure, we don't want children getting marijuana. We want children getting medicine.
Right, and it's got to pass through muster to be able to get into the hands of the caregivers to give to their children. Admittedly, we know that.
Especially because it's children, right? I mean, if this were adults, you could be a little more lenient, but with kids, you can't take risks, you can't take chances because they don't know better, and a lot of their parents don't entirely understand. They're not pharmacists.
Yep,
I mean,
admittedly. And everyone's learning as we go here, but we're now in this legal problem here in the state to deal with the fact that how do we get these kids medicine in the short term, and short term, admittedly, being, are we 6 months out? Are we a month out? Are we a week out? And I'm not getting a lot of feedback yet from the growers.
More from Jason. He's worthless.
I'm going to give Grassroots props here. Their corporate team out of Chicago is in communications with me. They're doing research as quickly as they can to get answers, and they obviously they're not going to make any promises to me, but they're at least checking in on it and following it. So I'm in touch with the marketing team out of Chicago. So Grassroots, I give them a props for at least entering the beginning of the conversation. But with Pure Dakota, we've had zero response to them. Now, that might just be because the way that they were reaching out didn't get to the people that need to hear the message. So I'm gonna give everyone a lot of gray zone on the issue right now. But ultimately, we're out of the 38.5 milligram tincture. That needs to change as quickly as possible somehow.
Well, there isn't a financial incentive to produce it, and that goes back to the patient registry problem. We are still having that issue, and we're still seeing a complete lack of patients. And I'm going to run some numbers here because I get a lot of people aren't business owners. They've never been business owners. And to them, for example, the number 16,000 might sound like a lot of money, as an example. $16,000 to an average person who's not running a business sounds like a lot. But let's look at the cost of production. You probably have to pay $100 for your state inspection.
Oh, at least.
Per vial, about.
Right.
You've got your overhead of your building, which is with the level of security they have to have. It's probably a $3,000 to $5,000 a month rent.
Oh, minimum. With some of the dev costs that we were hearing about were in the $20 million range. So that needs to be taken into consideration. There's a long cycle here before they're going to see profit margin at all. and they're having a hard time cash flowing in this market just due to the lack of patients that have been able to be approved so far. We're at a little over 1,600 now as of the last update.
So even if they all bought their maximum supply and they can't afford it, they can't. 1,600 across 5 dispensaries, because there's Forks, Fargo, Biz, Minot, Devil's Lake.
I think a safe estimate would be able to say $500 per visit per patient per month.
That's just not enough cash flow. $500 per patient per visit per month is, for those playing at home, 500 times 1,600. You're only cash flowing. It's just not enough.
Well, yeah, and when you do the math on that, remember that we have that intermediary vendor, aka the dispensary, which is not directly tied to the growers here in this state because we don't have vertical integration. That's a whole nother conversation we could go into for hours. But with that cash flow gets hit repeatedly by the fact that it goes through the dispensaries, and then it's got to go through the division, and then you see what I'm saying. All the costs here.
If we assume 100% went to the dispensaries, their cash flow is only $5,000 a month each. Each. That's pennies.
Yeah, that's
for a business.
Yeah, that's not much at all.
That's $64,000 a year in cash flow.
Yeah,
and that's
that doesn't even cover their wages. That doesn't even cover their wages or their electric bill for the year. I mean, and that's the thing that you got to look at is that with the nonprofit that I was working for, that we had to do a minimum of $946 through the door every day just to keep the lights on, cover all the paychecks, cover our insurance and everything else. So when you're getting into those numbers and you're saying $5,000 for a month, even a $5,000 for a week, that just covers the minimums to be able to keep doors open.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers don't add up. There's no way that this program can continue. And the other issue is there's still the affordability problem. But before we get into that, this section of Radio Free Fargo KRFF 95.9 LPFM is brought to you by Flatland Guitar. Flatland Guitar is your full-service guitar shop and your exclusive dealer for Taylor, Yamaha, and Paul Reed Smith guitars and many others. They also sell guitars on consignment as well as take trade-ins, along with having a full-service on-site repair center. Check out Flatland Guitar and Luthery on Facebook or visit them at 1450 25th Street South in Fargo. Once again, Flatland Guitar and Luthery, 1450 25th Street South, Fargo. So thank you guys for supporting the show and supporting all that we do. So now let's talk about what was actually decrim, because it wasn't. We need to talk about exactly what happened in terms of the legal structure, and we need to talk about what are the consequences and what do they mean.
Well, and as we said earlier at the top of the hour when we started talking about this, I don't consider this decrim. I've seen decrim in other places to where there is no criminality tied to getting caught with the product, with the cannabis. But here in North Dakota, that there are size limits that you're getting into. And even if you do get caught with below that half-ounce limit, you're still going to be having a visit with the judge, as I understand it. It just depends on the interpretation of the prosecutor. So I'm going to want you to line out a little bit more to the audience what we're actually looking here, because if we're going to use the blanket term decrim, a lot of people are going to be taken down the wrong road here.
Well, we're not going to use the term decrim. It's just that's what everybody calls it. That's what US News called it. And so as a result, that's what it's known as. So that's how we can get into the discussion. So in different states, you have different criminal penalties assigned to different things. So in some states, a misdemeanor is the lowest criminal offense. In other states, it's infraction. In others, it's called civil liability. In North Dakota, the lowest level of criminal offense is an infraction. And that's what it got changed to. So anything under an ounce, half ounce for your first 3 times caught with it is considered an infraction, which carries a maximum fine of $1,000 but does not carry jail time. The problem is it still creates that criminal record.
Correct.
So basically what you're looking at is a meeting with the public defender or an attorney. You're looking at a day in court. It's not going to take a full day, but it's a day off work in court.
Well, yeah, it feels like a day when you're waiting to hear
And the reality is you're likely going to get sentenced proportional to how much you have. So someone at just under that half-ounce bubble is going to probably get the full $1,000. Someone closer to nothing is going to probably get $100 or $200. That's still a lot of money. That's half a month's rent, folks.
Oh, at least for most of the common people that are out there, absolutely. There was one thing that we did push for, and the nice part about that was that the judge could also determine that the fine is zero. So it's 0 up to 1,000. So the judge has the discretion to pick somewhere between those two numbers. Now, are they going to be kind enough to do the 0 to someone? Well, that's completely up to...
Fargo, possibly.
Depends on the judge.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in West Fargo, probably not. Because let's look at the districts, right? If you're in Fargo, heart of Fargo, and you're caught with a gram or two, the judge may say, you know what? Bleep it. Fine. We're not going to fine you. Just don't do it again. But if you're a multi-time offender, it skyrockets. So let's pretend that you are someone who is a fool and gets caught not 1 or 2 times, but gets caught 3 times. It's now jumping back to a Class C misdemeanor. The lowest class misdemeanor is what it jumps back to, the 3-strike rule.
I'd have to have the actual I need to get that printed out in front of me so that we could go line by line through it. But at the end of the day, decriminalization, as I understand it, from what I'm used to, is that there shouldn't be any criminal record attached to this. And that's why it's called decriminalization, so that there's no judge involved, so that you're not dealing with a prosecutor. The cop can just hand you there shouldn't even be a ticket as far as I'm concerned. But, if you're outside the bounds of what's socially acceptable, that you get a infraction ticket that doesn't even generate a report. I don't know. Admittedly, I believe that the only answer in the long run is going to be legalization.
I agree with you 100%, but now let's talk about the long-term liabilities. So let's pretend you've gotten the criminal record.
Yep.
This one does not fade away.
Nope.
So traffic violations, municipal violations, they disappear after 3 years?
Depends on the jurisdiction, but you can
3
safely
to 5.
assume. Yeah, usually I use a 3 to 7 year spread on that so that I'm safe across the country.
Well, I know traffic falls off in North Dakota within 5.
Right.
Some of them fall off at 3, some of them fall off at 7. This never falls off. So it will be on your record till the day you die, or the day you get it sealed through a program that we'll talk about after the break that most people don't know about. So you've got the record now. Now, what does that mean? First off,
that means a lot. What most people don't realize, it's not the original criminal aspect of it that's going to hurt you. It's everything that we're about to talk about, like losing access to all student loans.
Yep. So first off, you lose access to your federal student loans. You can get private student loans, but you no longer have access to subsidized student loans.
Well, it's beyond, and Pell Grants. Yeah, any of the federal grants that you were eligible for, and most of the state grants, if they are still following the old federal rules, as soon as you have any type of drug conviction on there, it doesn't matter if it's cannabis, doesn't matter if it's methamphetamine, doesn't matter if it's H or codeine, if you've been caught with that you are no longer eligible for any of the federal financial aid, the loans and the grants. So I know Pell Grant recipients that have lost their entire Pell Grants because they got caught with a joint at a concert. And these were stand-up people, very high GPA on the dean's list. And all of a sudden, they had to discontinue college or university if they were working on their master's because of getting caught with marijuana in the past. And that still happens technically here in North Dakota under this fake decrim that was passed.
Yep. So that is problem number 1, is your student loans are gone. Problem number 2, credit. So credit has 3 pillars when we apply for credit, and by credit we mean loans in this country. It's capacity to repay your debts, it's credentials or history in terms of how off your income and on your history of paying back, and it's character. The third C is the problem, character. So if you have criminal records, that can be used against you to deny you for a loan that you're on the bubble for. So let's pretend that you're getting a car, right? A subprime auto loan, you've hit a rough batch. So that's a subprime loan, which is inherently high risk. And if you have a poor character score, you can therefore be subject to higher interest rates. Now, a criminal record could be the justification for that. So now you're paying more for what we'll call trust-based services. So you're paying higher interest rates on your credit and debit cards. You're paying more for insurance. You're probably paying more for your rent in the form of a higher down deposit, assuming you can find housing. So anything that's trust-based where you apply for credit, you are now at a huge disadvantage. And in Fargo, in Grand Forks, across the state, you need a car. Public transport is not an option for you in the vast majority of situations, and I think that's fair to say.
Right. Oh, admittedly. Well, and let's just stack onto this, layer cake that really is. So when we're looking at like national security background checks, obviously that, if you can't get this criminal charge handled in the proper way, you're no longer eligible for enlistment or commission in the U.S. military. This also prevents you from being able to apply and to be put into consideration for any GS position that's out there. So that means you can't work as a enumerator for the United States Census Bureau. Beyond that, it also blocks you from being able to file for any Department of Treasury import-export permits. It blocks you from being able to sign up for FDA programs. When you really get into, let's say a young person gets caught with a joint when they're 19 over at NDSU, and 10 years later they want to get into the international trade market because they've completely wrapped their head around what life requires, suddenly they're going to be discovering that old conviction will block them access to the global market.
Yeah, if you've got a international business degree and you get a conviction, switch majors.
Yeah, you just look at opening a muffler shop, and I'm not trying to be rude there, but you're extremely hindered. I mean, even doing a bar examination to become an attorney, that I've seen people that they had convictions from when they were just an adult. They turned 18, 19, they'd done something foolish, and years later they had finished law school, they'd passed their bar exam.
And they were told, well, no.
And then they had to spend the next 3 to 4 years litigating whether or not they can get their license from the bar. I mean, and that's just because of a small petty incident like what being caught with cannabis really is here in the state of North Dakota. So, I mean, there's so many different things that get affected by the ripples that come off of this first encounter with law enforcement. If you get that conviction, it can definitely derail a person off of their life choices.
Also, let's talk about the problem that never got resolved, which is the loophole of what is delivery. So delivery under the law has a really vague definition, as does intent to deliver, and as does manufacture, not so much. But there's deliver, intent to deliver, there's possession, and then there's distribution.
Right.
So distribution, delivery, and attempt to deliver have very vague meanings. So let's pretend you and I are driving in the car, and there's a bag of marijuana in the car that's sealed. Okay, is that attempt to deliver? Well, depends who you ask.
Well, and also, did the passenger bring it into the car, leave it into the car? Because as soon as it enters into the vehicle, everyone has to remember aspects of this, that in the eyes of the court, that if you did get pulled over with said bag in the car, and the passenger, if they brought it in there, doesn't cop to claiming that that's theirs, by default, the law recognizes the driver as responsible for anything in the vehicle. So if no one claims it, you as the driver then gets that charge by default.
With one exception, and that is a business vehicle or a vehicle used for rideshare. Sure. That is an exception. Just so we're clear, Uber drivers out there, you're okay.
Yeah. You might want to get on to Lyft real quick.
Yeah, but you're going to have to prove that the car is doing a ton of rideshare to use that as, well, I didn't know. It would basically have to be a rideshare exclusive or business exclusive vehicle.
Right, so let's carry on. We're going down the road. We have the bag in the car with us. There's 2 of us in there.
And we've got, let's say, a 30-second of an ounce.
Sure.
Just to keep us under the rules.
Sure.
And the police officer pulls us over.
Uh-oh. Yep, here we go.
He decides in his infinite wisdom that he wants to search the car because he knows who Dave is and he knows who Steve Peterson is.
Yeah, keep your hands on the dashboard, people.
He finds the bag.
Yep.
He can now charge us with distribution, and intent to deliver, and manufacture. Manufacture, you'd have to get a warrant to search the home. But there are now 3 charges on the stack. Those being minimum, which is intent to deliver, distribution, and possession.
Right.
That's serious crime. That's misdemeanors. That's all sorts of things, and the amount does not matter for those charges anymore.
Oh, and dear God, if we went over to Moorhead to have a burger, then we're into felony status, and we're
that's federal drug trafficking, but that's not North Dakota's control.
Right.
So what ends up happening is, because the law does not define delivery, distribution, and intent to deliver as over a half ounce, you can't have it in your vehicle and consider yourself safe. If you have it in anything that's sealed, you are now at heavy risk for going back to that misdemeanor Class C, or in rare cases, Class A, which carries between 30 days to a year in jail, thousands of dollars in fines, mandatory drug rehab, and it will completely destroy your life. So don't think that because this law passed, you can have it in your car. Don't even really think you're safe having it, period. I understand people are going to make what is a bad decision here and have it, but be warned and understand what you're playing with.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, no matter how much we advocate for cannabis in the state of North Dakota, we need the people that are out there hearing this to understand, as it stands on the law right now, you're still going to get shaken down by the cops. You're still going to be finding yourself in court. Now, depending on the other circumstances that are tied around this, you may find yourself over at Cass County Jail sitting there needing a bail bond. You know, it just depends on how far down the road that the officer wants to take it. Keyword, kids, don't be a dick to the cops. That's a real quick way to get in trouble.
Yeah, so don't be mean, don't be a problem to the police officer, but also you will almost always need to post bail. Because it's an infraction, you will always have to post bail. It is at the discretion of the officer what the bail is between that 0 to 1,000. It can't be more than 1,000. It can't be.
Well, the bail schedule is set by the district judges, so that's set.
Yes, but it is determined by the judge. You are correct. But if they're simply charging you with an infraction, the bail cannot be more than the maximum penalty, which is $1,000. So
nice.
That is the maximum theoretical bail that you could be forced to experience. And this is a reminder to everybody, you are listening to KRFF 95.9 low power FM radio in Fargo, Moorhead. And we have the phone lines open if you want to call in and kind of ask questions to us. And that number is 701-478-4959. Again, 701-478-4959. And we're going to have about 5 more minutes where we discuss the public defender system, how that works, and what that means as well. And then we will go into the next segment.
All right. Well, so one of the last things that I want to say about the mystery car that we're driving around with this mystery bag, that most of the time when people are encountering law enforcement out on the street, 90+% of that is via traffic stop. And it's because blinker is out, or your tail light's not working, or your license plate light isn't working. There always has to be an initial reason for being pulled over. Most of it's usually because your vehicle's not in great shape, and then after that would be because of poor driving habits. So if you roll through a stop sign, expect to be stopped, and then at that point, if there's a reasonable suspicion for that officer to continue, then it turns into probable cause for a search real quick, depending on how you answer or what they encounter. Once you get pulled over, you have to understand that world is out of control for you until you are able to be released by that officer. So we need to get the pot attorneys from California on here, and I can't say what they say. No, I can't say they're
But
slogan.
even that isn't that's not great advice, to be honest with you. In a state where it's criminal, don't do what they say. Don't be rude. Be nice. Be cooperative with the officer.
Always.
The best thing you can do is act normal and not try to get all preachy and hyper defensive.
No.
Because if you start saying, I'm not here to discuss my day, this, that, and the other thing, the officer is now immediately aware that this is not normal behavior and you're hiding something.
Right.
And when you're hiding something, that almost creates the probable cause that's the problem itself. So,
and that's the reason wwhy, sovereign citizens get shaken down so hard when they get pulled over, because they go immediately into that script, and the officer's like, oh, there goes my normal day.
Yep. And in North Dakota especially, we have a Fourth Amendment problem. This was broken by on-again, off-again supporter of legalization, Rob Port. and he discussed how when you get a good attorney, you almost always win on Fourth Amendment grounds. But when you get a bad attorney, you almost never win on Fourth Amendment grounds.
Right. Well, and some of the attorneys don't even know how to properly use the discovery process of the courts to be able to see what was incident to that arrest. I mean, there's a lot of paperwork report, and now these days video that you can pull. Smart attorneys want to know everything that's going on the other side of the coin before they start doing things. So they have to know how to do discovery.
Vogel will protect you well, Vogel Law. Brudvik will protect you well. I have to give him a plug because of Scott. Agland Law will do a good job. The problem is when you get into the public defender system,
right?
They have less than 2 hours to prepare your defense. To put it in perspective, this show is about an hour.
Right.
And we haven't even discussed all the fine-toothed detail. We haven't gone through it with a fine-toothed comb.
God, no.
So if you are relying on a public defender, and this is the cruel reality of America, your best option is almost always plead it out.
Well, yeah, I'm
unless you're blatantly unless there's literally no marijuana in the car and it was actually oregano, as much as the meme is, or if you were, let's pretend you went to Tochi and you bought some CBD flower, which I think they sell there, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. That might be over at the pipe shop.
Okay, well, let's pretend you bought CBD flower and it's not actually marijuana, then you can get off, but...
Oh, good luck. Well, I mean, you're expect to be shaken down, though. I mean, until they prove that product does not qualify as the illegal cannabis, they will treat it as such until it's proven that it's not.
Right. But what I'm saying is if you don't have an attorney, unless you know for a fact you weren't guilty, don't expect to get off on a technicality.
Well, from personal experience, I can tell you can go in that courtroom completely innocent. You're still going to walk out with a charge sometimes because the judge has the ability via judicial power to say, I'm going to err on the side of caution here. I think that there might have been a problem, so we're going to give you this conviction. So that does happen from time to time in the judicial system here, especially on the criminal.
And then you don't have the means to appeal it because, again, you're relying on a PD.
Right.
So don't get caught, guys. Don't do it is the real advice here. If you are, certainly understand the added risks of a vehicle. Certainly understand that, but I thought it was decriminalized is not a good defense in the courts. It will actually get you into more trouble.
Right.
Because it'll show that you don't care. And that is one thing that they don't like is feeling disrespected. But before we move forward, we want to thank our other sponsor, the Aquarium. And coming up at the Aquarium this month is, let me find.
Uh-oh, we got a problem here.
He's got to read. Okay, I'm looking for it. It's not on here yet. Okay, oh well.
We're going to make up a band.
No, I've got something now. Is the Trance Monolith CD release this Saturday, November 9th. It's local progressive metal with Phobophilic, Hailing Andromeda from Minneapolis, and Sonus Nexus. There's going to be an after party hosted by Lick Narson. The doors open at 8. It's a great show. Prog metal is always fun. Trance Monolith is great. So check them out. It's going to be a lot of fun, and maybe I'll see you there.
I always like after parties.
Yeah, the after party is going to be the real fun part.
The after party is always the best part.
So we've kind of covered
a lot.
Schrodinger's decrim.
I'm sorry, I got to laugh on that one. Schrodinger's cat decrim. I love it.
Because
is it alive? Is it not alive?
Well, no, it's decrim until you actually get caught. Because everyone thinks it's decrim, and then they get caught, and then they discover by going into the legal system and looking into the metaphorical box that it's not.
Right after that got signed, but before we had hit the August start date of that, I heard someone out in Bismarck had gotten caught, and they were just complaining and complaining and complaining.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, but the point being is there's a time frame to this. So a lot of people also need to realize, even when laws do change, if they don't have an emergency order tied to them, it takes until August for the law to go into this.
Well, thankfully it's November, so it is in effect. But if you were arrested before August 3rd, no, you are under the old SKU.
Right.
Misdemeanor A. In theory, Representative Nelson has done good work in discovery, and Representative Nelson is arguing that, according to North Dakota law, you are supposed to be tried by the law on the date of the trial.
Right.
Whether or not Representative Nelson is right or not is hard to say. My gut says that he's wrong. He is a state representative. However, he would know a little bit more than me, but he is not an attorney. So be careful about what Representative Nelson says in that regard. You may be able to win it with a good attorney, but good luck. But now we've done dreary doom and gloom for 37 minutes now.
Are we going to make them happy for a little bit?
We're going to make them happy, Steve.
Oh, man. Which way are we going to go with that? Because I get in trouble every time I try to make people happy.
I know you do. I've seen you try and make people happy. Your ex-wife would say the same.
Oh, God. Don't bring her into this. She is an attorney. I'll get sued in a heartbeat.
Well, I doubt she's listening to the show.
Oh, I doubt she is, too.
But anyway, the good news is the record ceiling that got passed.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, how it works, and what it actually does.
So now, I'm going to have to ask a dumb question right on the top of this. Are they still putting this under the term deferred imposition, or are we just going right to an expungement?
It's not expungement. It's in between. So it's not deferred imposition, because deferred imposition still shows up on a federal background check.
Right.
Sealing doesn't, but there's still a record of the court documents. It's not scrubbed from the court. It's just not openable by the court.
Right.
Except for in a situation where it would be a gross malfeasance of justice.
So as I understood it with what they had done, that people are now able to get this removed from their record. Sealed, which does help them in some instances. Still isn't still not the expungement that we're looking for. Yeah. But there are avenues for people that have been arrested in the past to appeal those convictions and to be able to get that considered for that sealing. Yeah. That's a good thing for people, because like we made that situational make-believe earlier of someone who went to law school who has a conviction from a long time ago. Sealing the records here may be enough to satisfy the Bar Association to let that person in. And I keep picking on the attorneys because in my limited experience on the planet here, that they typically have to go through the most work to be able to get that license.
Yep.
Don't say that to an accountant. That CPA is more.
So let's talk about that. So step one, no criminal record for 5 years.
No criminal record for 5 years. That means you have to stay off the radar.
No civil infractions for 5 years.
Yep, off the radar.
No civil violations. So not even a speeding ticket. So step one, no record of any description for 5 years. That's step one. Step two, you have to then have never had any of the following: violence.
Yep.
As in what's considered violent crime.
So that'd be most of your assault and battery.
Assault and battery, terrorizing, all that stuff. You can't have any sexual crimes.
Right.
You cannot, and I think that's fair, okay? We shouldn't be sealing the records of people who have sexually assaulted people. Fair. Violent crime, also fair. Here's where it gets iffy. Can't have a firearms violation. Now, you understand why that's iffy.
Oh, yeah.
But if you have a marijuana charge and you had a gun at the time with you, you can't get it sealed.
Nope.
But otherwise, you are now eligible. So congratulations. You have no record for 5 years, no violent crime, which I agree with. I agree with the violent crime provision. No sexual crime. I also agree. No firearms violations. No parole violations that are present. You now can fill out an application, and it will be heard by a court. So what does that really mean? Well, it really means you have to hire an attorney. Again, shameless plug. I always recommend Vogel Law.
Yeah, I can see the top of their building from over here.
Yeah, great building. So you hire an attorney. It's going to cost you between $300 and $500 an hour.
Well, it depends. I mean,
I know what they charge them.
Yeah.
Between $300 and $500, depending on who you get. Brodvik's $300. And then they're going to have to argue your case in court. It's not guaranteed.
No.
But you are presumed, if you meet those criteria, to be okay.
Right. And that's the whole thing that people need to realize. Once you walk into a courtroom, it really comes down to judge's prerogative. That is their domain. They treat it as such. Never make the man behind the counter or the woman behind the counter that's wearing the robe mad. You're not going to like how it turns out for you at the end of the day.
Yep.
Keep them happy.
So basically, you will get it's sealed, but not expunged, assuming that you're successful. Now, that's a lot of hoops to go through, but it's a heck of a lot better than what we had before. And now all the problems we listed start to reverse. You can theoretically get student loans again. It should not show up when you're applying for housing, and it shouldn't show up on a job check, but anything federal, you're still kind of iced out of. You're still iced out of your ATF licenses and that. But for the vast majority of your life, you get it back.
Right.
So if you're a high schooler and you've gotten caught, don't think that this will hurt your chances of going into the career you want to go into now. Just stay off the radar, stay clean through your whole college, go before the court, argue that you've gotten a job, show that you have a job, okay? I don't care if you're a waiter or something.
Oh, yeah, and that's the thing. They're not gonna expect you to come in there to be, Mr. Multimillionaire. But if you're doing your part to be a decent person in society and you're working, that's going to go a long ways forward for people.
You don't have to be Mother Teresa, but at the same time, you can't be old Blacktop. I don't know if anyone gets that reference from the Beatles.
Come together
right now.
Yeah, we better not start doing that. We were already singing earlier today. Nobody wanted to hear that.
But you get what I'm saying. You can't be like a literal smelly hippie, but you also don't have to be Mother Teresa.
I'll tell you the quick secret for anybody that ever has to deal with a court. Shave, take a shower, wear your best clothes, go borrow a suit if you have to, dress, look nice and respectable. People will judge you. You are going into a courtroom with a judge. You will be judged.
Especially when they assume that you are a criminal because you have a criminal record. Even if that suit is the hideous suit from My Cousin Vinny, the judge will appreciate that you tried.
Yeah, it's not that you're going to look the best. It could be a 10-year-old suit. It's the point that you took the moment to show respect to the court.
You're poor. You're not disrespectful.
Yeah.
It's okay to be poor when you go to a court. It's not okay to be brazen, I guess is the best way to say that.
Yeah, you can be indigent. Just don't act like it.
Right. And so, now that we've gotten that out of the way, it will be sealed. You can move on with your life in theory. But this is what kind of irks me the wrong way, is there's another path. And it's a path that is being abused. And it is the governor's pardon side. So governor's pardons in North Dakota are a little weird.
Wow, you're just going for it today, aren't you?
I'm not going to say his name, but we all know who.
Can I?
If you want to say it.
I always have to remove black marks after I speak publicly, from people sending hate my way.
It's your prerogative, Steve. If you want to name who it was written for, that's on you. I ain't falling on that grenade.
Yeah, I'll leave that one alone. We'll see if the public really wants to know someday.
Yeah, I'll give you a hint. It's the kid of someone who ran for office. There we go. But before we get into that little teaser, this hour of programming on KRF 95.9 LPFM is being underwritten by Northland Vapor Company. Northland Vapor e-liquids are quality, not costly. They offer many smoking cessation options for all smokers looking to quit. Northland Vapor also offers a variety of CBD products, ranging from capsules, tinctures, e-liquids, candies, gummies, flour, as well as CBD coffees and teas. Northland Vapor Company has 3 locations, Moorhead, South Fargo, and Bemidji, or you can visit them at www.northlandvapor.com. Northland Vapor Company is quality, not costly. And we're back.
Yeah, we are. Hey, I just wanted to let you know, since I was picking on Grassroots earlier as a company, one of their marketing directors just emailed me while we're sitting here. So bit by bit, we're starting to create a dialogue there, but we still haven't heard anything out of Pure Dakota regarding the lack of oil in the state.
So I imagine you got PR company statement number 5 this time instead of number 3. Take notes, Sanford. Take notes.
A lot of truth there. Yeah, let's not even talk about the big S word right now. I'm getting kind of tired of the fact that I get lit up by their lobbyist every time I say anything.
But back to where were we? Governor's pardon. So if you've got good connections, you can apply for a pardon with the governor, and it will now be a marijuana pardon. Now, that does not clear your record, but that also shows up on your criminal history. It doesn't show up as sealed. It shows up better. It shows up pardoned by the governor. And when people see a pardon, they automatically assume it meant that you weren't guilty. And this is a way for some very connected people to make sure that their kids' records were cleared while not having to go through that process. And the governor only issues so many pardons a year. The application process for this year is now closed. It was closed for months now, but you'll be able to apply next year for that pardon. That has no restrictions. That is just the opinion of the governor and the board of pardoners, which includes 3 people, 2 in the event of 1 person, but it includes 3 people. Those people would be people that have a family member on the pardoning board. But in general, it's going to include 3 people. You apply, and they determine whether or not you get a pardon, and then Governor Burgum signs it, and it says pardoned by the governor. But the problem with this is it's not really being used for regular folk. So I know of some people who will apply for it.
Is politics ever really used for regular folk, David?
Sometimes. That guy who was in jail for 75 years, was it, for marijuana possession and was dying of cancer, he got pardoned.
After 75 years?
Well, no, he served like 5.
Oh.
Remember the guy who was literally dying of cancer, got 75 years for marijuana?
I was thinking about another gentleman down in Louisiana that they're still holding.
Oh, no, this guy got pardoned. And then Wayne Angelos got pardoned. He's fairly prolific now in California. He kind of dropped the legalization case to make a mixtape. But, sorry, not Wayne, Weldon Angelos.
Oh, yeah.
But some people get pardoned.
Is he related to Steve Angelos?
No.
Okay, because I was going to say that would be ironic that one of the largest growers in the state had that as a family member.
But the problem is, again, it's not being used how it should. So the theory about the pardons was it should be used for people who really got screwed over, not for people who are very well-connected politically, and that's what it's becoming. It's becoming a tool in the state for the politically well-connected. So call your representatives out on it. If you want to apply for a pardon, go ahead. Keep us updated. I don't know of anyone who's gotten one for marijuana beyond those few people.
Yeah, I've got nothing there. It was one of those things that if it happened, it was such a star chamber event that the general public really didn't get a lot of information about that.
Well, we know the 2 that got them.
Yeah, well, I really would like my phone not to be exploding for the rest of the day.
Yeah, me too. But the point being, beyond those 2, we haven't heard of anybody who got it.
Right. Well, and part of that is that people need to learn how to be able to take advantage of that. You would think that the state would be a little bit more transparent with that. However, bit by bit, maybe that's something we need to focus on, is throwing sunshine on that, because there's so many different little small aspects that are all wrapped around this legalization debate that we have to deal with, because it's not just changing one sentence of law here in the state. It's buried all over this entry code.
50 some odd pages last my count.
Right. And anytime people wonder why your measures are so long, it's because you're trying to pull all 50 pages of the law out so that that we're addressing all the different parts of that. So when people give you a hard time about the length, they need to understand it's not like it's just one law, one line in the state law that we have to change.
I wish it was.
Yeah, me too.
Measure 3 made it that way, but Measure 3 did it in a way that people didn't like, which was just said everything that's not covered here, scratched, which was the way of consolidating Century Code, but no one wanted it that way. The problem is people want it both ways. They want it spelled out for them, but they also want it to be short.
Right.
You can't do both. If I've got to mess with 50 pages of law, it's going to be a minimum of about 50 pages, unless I just shortcut and say, look, go find it yourself.
Well, and people also need to recognize the difficulty of rewriting law. Ultimately, what we're trying to accomplish here is that the positioning of a paragraph or of a comma in a sentence makes all the difference in the world. The difference between the words shall, will, and may makes all the difference in the world of a law. And it's not an easy lift to be able to get all of the verbiage properly stated in the law that doesn't have unintended bad consequences.
So let's give people a funny example of that. You remember the bus, right, in the United Kingdom, where they claimed they were going to cut poverty in half.
Oh, okay. Sounds like a great dream there. Pipe dream. Go on.
Well, what they did is they put the comma in the wrong spot.
Oh, yes. I shared that over on my Facebook feed. We are going to cut homeless people in half.
Yeah, it said we are going to cut homeless. In the United Kingdom, we have launched a new initiative to cut homelessness, comma, in half.
Right.
That comma made it sound like the homeless were being cut in half.
Oh, it was beautiful. And the marketing company didn't catch it before they put it on all the buses driving around the UK.
Yeah, it was great. A really funny moment and a great example of if that had been a law, theoretically.
Oh, yeah.
They would have had to go literally chop homeless people in half.
Well, and that was one of the things that we caught in a bill that had come forward, that the spell check switched cannabis to cannibals. And for a little while there, during the medical marijuana debate, we were like, guys, no, we need to stop talking. We need to fix this typo. We're not here to legalize cannibals today.
Yeah, that almost happened in New Hampshire, too.
Yeah, and that was during this last session we had that.
And as always on the show, we are going to end it here. I think we hit a nice natural ending point, a good place where people can laugh. Coming up next is Do Good. It's a show talking about nonprofits and kind of how to get started in your community. And because we're going to play 2 songs for you guys. The first one I'm a fan of. So
before he does that, don't burn your fingers and play safe, kids. Play safe.
All righty.